Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Fridley City Council. Would you please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on tonight's agenda is the usual approval of the proposed consent agenda given by our city manager, Mr. Weiss-Opel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Wait for it to come on the screen. It's a little bit longer this time too, so.
There it
you
is.
go. Thank you. Okay, for our consent agenda, we have, first of all, city council meeting minutes of March 25th. And we also have the minutes of the Planning Commission from March 20th. We have a resolution approving final plat 1804 by the Sherman Associates Development LLC on behalf of the property owners of the city's Housing Redevelopment Authority. We also have approval of a joint powers agreement for East River Road Sidewalk Extension Project, ST 2019-21 with the County of Anoka. We have a resolution approving and authorizing the reappropriation of certain special revenue funds for the fiscal year ending December 31st of 2018. And then we have claims, and that is the consent agenda.
Thank you. Are there any of these proposed consent agenda items that the council wishes to remove for further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to remove number 4.
Okay. I'm going to do that at, is there anybody in the room for item number 4, joint powers agreement for the, with Anoka County? Probably not. We can do that at the end of the public hearings, or we can do it first. It's probably not anything lengthy. At your pleasure, council member.
At the end's fine.
Okay.
Mr. Kozlowitz just got to stay anyway, so.
So we'll do it.
And then I just have a couple
12A.
quick questions on the Planning Commission. Not minutes, but some resolution, because I didn't see there was a resolution there, so. I don't know, do you want me to take that now, or should I just bring it
Sure.
up later?
Yeah, but bring it up now.
Okay. So on page 12, and Scott, maybe you can help out with that. On page 12, Ms. Stromberg talks about the, that there's still some wetland delineation that's happening. Is that all resolved now? Or are we still working on, is that still a work in progress?
The wetland delineation has happened, and there is still some work relative to some soil corrections that are happening in that area, but the delineation has happened, and we have bought the wetland credits, and we are ready to move on with the development project with regard to the wetlands.
Great, thank you. And then on page 13, the park dedication, the question was asked about park dedication. And then Ms. Stromberg said that she thought Commissioner Hines would be able to answer that, but then he said, well, I don't know if there's an exact plan yet. So are there park dedication plans? Or,
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Bolcom, as with any development, there are park dedication fees paid. There were $1,500 per individual town home paid for this development. At 72 lots, that is $108,000. And that goes into certainly the city's funds for determination of, through their park planning efforts and through a formal process, decisions are made later. But initially, that money just goes into the city fund for park purposes.
okay. All right. I don't think it was real clear in the minutes. So, and then is there any resolution on bus stops, or is that still a work in progress too? It's on page 15, talking about bus stops in the corridor study. That's still work in progress, whether
Yes.
there'll be a different
Mr.
bus
Mayor,
stop.
Councilmember Bolcom, that is, you're absolutely right. That is a work in progress
Okay.
at this time.
Thank you so much. That's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Are there any persons in the audience that wish to remove any of the proposed consent agenda items as presented, other than the one that's already been removed? Hearing none and seeing none.
If none, with the removal of item 4 and placing it as 12A, I would move approval of the proposed consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Well, let's not make it, that's a public hearing, it can't be just, it's a new business, isn't it? So does it make sense to put it under public hearings?
Are you questioning where they were placing number
Yes,
4A
yep.
in the agenda?
Yes,
I said 12,
He said 12A, that's
12A.
after,
Okay.
that's the last thing
all
before.
right.
yeah.
I thought it was gonna go at the very end,
Oh,
sorry.
I see. Yeah, I could go after
Excuse
13
me.
as well.
13A would be.
Absent.
Yeah, you wanted to go after 13A?
I don't care.
Okay, well, you're the one that said.
I know. Well, I know, because that's public hearings, so that's why thought it was confusing.
It's after.
Okay. Anyway,
All right,
sorry.
okay, let's move on.
There was a second there.
The next item,
We didn't vote, though.
We didn't vote.
oh,
We got
thank you.
Yeah.
That's what happens when I get disrupted. Okay, since you're ready to vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Okay, now the motion carries. Which leads us, do we have some presentations that we want to do now, Mr. Weishofer, for Jim Co's Lucher or under?
No,
community part-
that'll happen
okay.
at updates,
Okay, great.
informal status reports.
Okay, so, moving on. Next item on business is open forum. Are there any persons in the audience that wish to address the council on something that is not on tonight's agenda? Hearing none, seeing none. We'll move on. Do we have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda with the change?
I move to adopt the agenda with the addition of
12A.
12A.
I second that.
We have a second. Hearing no other discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed, the motion also carries. Item number 7, under new business, a resolution to approve a contract for organic recycling services.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm here tonight to present the curbside organics collection contract with Republic Services. This is the second contract that the city would be entering into for this program. Organics refers to that portion of the waste stream that quickly dissolves, including fruits and vegetables, meats and bones, paper towels, and certified compostable plateware and flatware. The benefits of organics collection are similar to that of traditional recycling. There's the economic benefit of having a valuable finished product that can be sold, as well as the ecological benefit of having reduced material going into the waste stream. When organics collection is implemented, participants can reduce their amount of trash by an estimated 30%. And this is especially important right now for Anoka County residents due to the closure of the GRE facility, which previously converted trash into energy. Since that's been closed, all Anoka County waste has been landfilled. There are metropolitan area goals that encompass the city of Fridley, and this includes 15% diversion of organics from the waste stream by 2030. We're currently at less than 3% metro-wide, which necessitates new programs such as the city's curbside organics recycling. Developing an organics recycling program is also a Green Step City's best practice. The city began taking steps to implement an organics recycling program in 2016 when we updated Chapter 113 to specify that one contract would be entered into with one hauler to collect organics from voluntary participants in housing units of between 1 and 4 units. In 2017, we went out for an RFP, and the selected proposal was given by Republic Services, which also provides the city's traditional curbside recycling. This was a short-term contract from April 1st to 2018 until April 30th, 2019. We entered into such a short-term contract in order to better understand the logistics and finances and desirability of such a program. The program includes weekly collection of organics, a provision of a 30-gallon organic cart to people who subscribe to the program, proper disposal of organic material, and direct billing by the hauler. The program began on April 1st of last year with 160 participants, and it's currently up to 210. A survey of participants indicated a high level of satisfaction with the program. 98% of the respondents indicated that they were very satisfied. And we've also seen very encouraging tonnage collected through the program. People who have signed up for the organics recycling program are diverting between 400 and 500 pounds of trash from the waste stream each year, compared to the goal of only 210 pounds per person, including both organics and traditional recycling. So in organics alone, people are collecting more than double what our goal for them is. However, Republic Services has indicated that the current program as is not financially feasible, and that they need to restructure the contract. Knowing this, we included an option for organics recycling in the RFP for traditional recycling that occurred last year. We did not receive a proposal that was better than what Republic offered, and so have selected to continue with Republic Services as the preferred proposal. They're suggesting a hybrid model in which there is a minimum monthly rate, and that they would bill the city for any difference between the minimum monthly rate and the amount collected by their subscribers. So, for instance, if the 210 current subscribers are each paying $10, they would be collecting $2,100 from the subscribers, and then would bill the city $1,900 in the difference to reach that minimum monthly rate. This amount that the city would be billed for would be paid for through the grant provided by Anoka County. The amount that the city has received from this grant has increased significantly in the most recent years in order to support programs just like this that are going above and beyond to increase tonnage. The amount that we've received has increased from $92,000 in 2016 to $127,000 this year. And they've specifically earmarked almost $12,000 of that for organics and $20,000 in additional enhancements for programs above and beyond the city's required curbside traditional recycling program and drop-off program. Beyond the inclusion of a minimum monthly rate, this contract is functionally similar to the contract that was approved last year. It also includes the collection of organics for city facilities at no cost. It's also a much longer term length so that we don't necessarily have to keep revisiting the contract every year. However, the contract does contain a very flexible 60-day notice for the city to leave the contract. So if the city, if there are market changes or if there is a desire to change the program, the city would be able to very easily leave or renegotiate this contract. We are implementing a number of incentives to promote the program. There's currently a referral program in which people who sign up at the suggestion of their neighbors can put their neighbor's name in, and their neighbor will receive a free month of collection. We're also continuing our partnership with the Fridley and Columbia Heights Kiwanis Club to provide participants in the program with free compost later this month. We will also be having a discount at the Environmental Fun Fair. This is an event that we coordinate with the Anoka County 4-H at Springbrook Nature Center, and Republic Services will be at that event with their recycling truck. People who come to that event on May 4th and sign up for the organics program will receive 3 free months of recycling. So we encourage everybody to attend the event and to sign up for organics recycling. It's very easy. Once you sign up, you can come into either Springbrook Nature Center or City Hall. You will pick up a free kitchen pail as well as a supply of compostable bags. You can place that pail, we recommend, in the kitchen to collect all of the food scraps and waste coming out of your kitchen. Put it in the cart, roll it down to the curb on collection day, and you'll receive a bill directly from Republic Services. At this time, I'd like to answer any questions about the program or the contract and request that Council approve the resolution authorizing signature of the contract.
Thank you, Ms. Workin. Does the council have questions from?
Mr. Mayor, Ms. Workin, how come you can't compost grease?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Bolcom, while many animal products can be put in the organics, such as bones or meat, grease doesn't break down in the same manner as when it's included as like part of like the regular animal. When it's concentrated in that way, it doesn't break down into the compost in the time frame that they need it to move it through the system.
Okay,
Thanks.
So you can't throw grease, that has to be thrown in your garbage, so
Yeah,
we can't eliminate garbage, I guess.
right.
Not entirely, not yet anyways.
Almost.
Well, there are places that commercially collect grease, and I don't know, what do they do with that? Don't they,
Yeah. What do they do?
it's not wasted, isn't?
Yeah, for some reason, I just thought it's something you could put in there, but I'm surprised.
You know, there's commercial, you go to these restaurants, they collect the grease, what do they do with those 55-gallon drums of grease?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Bolcom, that's a great question. So in commercial compost facilities, they are able to accept a limited amount of grease. So if you have just a little bit in the bottom of a frying pan, you can wipe that up with a paper towel and put that into the organics. Large scale commercial grease recycling, I believe it goes a lot of different ways. I've heard of people converting their cars to run on grease as like an alternative fuel. If you drive behind them, it kind of smells like potato chips.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, French fries. So I believe that's a common use of it from like fast food.
So
what you're
literally,
saying-
there's vehicles that are passing gas.
Oh, God. So what you're saying is though you could use a paper towel and wipe up the grease and then because paper towels and napkins and all those things can go in your compost, correct?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Bolcom, yes, in limited quantities, you can put grease into the commercial compost. They're just trying to avoid like whole cans of it, which wouldn't decompose at the correct rate.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Workin, I'll just mention on page 78, item 15.5, you did mention that with a 60 days notice, we can sever the contract. But it looks to me that it's 60 days notice before a yearly anniversary. So basically, you can only looks by this thing that I'm reading, you can rescind it with, or void the contract with 60 days notice prior to a yearly anniversary date. Just for clarity.
Yes, thank you, Mr.
The other comment I
Mr.
wish to
Mayor.
make, I'm not against organics collection, but I think that we can do better between ourselves and our waste hauler, the organics collector, because when this first came up a year plus ago for us, I felt that it wasn't going to be hugely successful. And 210 participants is great, but certainly not anywhere near what we need to get to. I think this is the future, that we cannot continue to just simply, we're lazy in a lot of ways, and we throw everything in the garbage because we don't know what is supposed to be sorted in all these different containers now. So it's confusing, and people are just, it needs to be convenient, and it's not convenient. So people, and that, I guess I've proven it just with only 210 people in this community. So I think that we need to go back to the drawing board, and eventually, I have always assumed that it will end up being forced on people if they don't want to do this voluntarily. At some point, it'll get to that point where it'll be forced upon people, like recycling is, where they are paying a quarterly fee on their utilities for, and it may get to that. But I'm hoping that we can somehow get people to voluntarily do this, but it's got to be more convenient. So, and I've made comment previously. I just wanted to get it on the public record that I'm not against it, but I think we got some work ahead of us.
Cost effective too.
So, are there any other comments?
So in order, I move a resolution to approve contract for organic recycling services, Allied Waste Services of North America LLC, found in pages 67 through 84.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any final discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed, motion carries. Let's see, just under new business number 8, liquor license renewals. Good evening, Ms. Scogan.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. We do have a short presentation.
Sure.
Tonight, we're here to talk about the City of Fridley on-sale liquor license approvals. The city license year is May 1st to April 30th. and all renewal applications have provided the requirement documentation and received staff approvals. All the establishments complied with the city's minimum requirement, 40% gross food sales. Paradise Brownie Point, serving wine and malt liquor, has complied with the city's minimum 60% gross food sales. The police review found no major issues preventing any of the establishments from receiving renewal of their license. This year, Crooners Lounge and Supper Club came to us to request an amendment to their patio endorsement and liquor license. They have established a strong jazz entertainment record in the Twin Cities and want to add a temporary outdoor stage. Patrons would be required to enter and exit from the building onto the patio and into the tent. The tent would only have an emergency exit besides the main entrance. The Development Review Committee met and agreed that they have a unique setting and felt it was allowable. So if you look at the Crooners stage here, you'll see on the top portion next to Moore Lake, you have the tent, and then the patio is just to the right. And on the west side there, next to the fence, you enter the patio through the doors of the building itself. So you come out the building, go into the patio, and then go into the tent. So all of the alcohol would remain within the patio area. And it's all contiguous, which is required by state law. So at this time, I'll answer any questions, but staff is recommending a motion to approve the 2019-20 on-sale intoxicating liquor licenses and additional license requirements, including the patio endorsement expansion for Crooners for the following establishments: Applebee's, Banquets of Minnesota, Broadway Bar and Pizza, Crooners Lounge and Supper Club, King's Restaurant, Route 47 Pub and Grub, Shortstop Fridley, Two Stooges Bar and Grill, the two clubs for the Fridley American Legion and the Fridley VFW, and Paradise Brownie Point, which is a wine and malt liquor license.
Thanks, Ms. Scogan. Just looking through here, you had, what, 10 listed there, and I think we had a report for 12.
We have 8 on sale. We have 2 clubs, and we have 1, which is wine and liquor.
6.
But aren't we
Did
approving
you have
those?
Kings in there as well on your list?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Kings. I must have missed that. Kings should be, they're included, I just didn't say it.
Yeah.
I thought there was one other one there. I don't know if we can get
Can you
that
put it back up, Scott?
Put it on the screen again?
Thank you.
They're not in the same order, what I have in my paper
They
docs.
kind of like go across alphabetically
Yep, okay.
Are you done, Mayor?
versus the chart that you see on your second page of your memo.
All right, maybe that's the only one.
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple questions when you're done.
Yeah, okay, that looks like it's the only one then. Yep, okay, just the one that, Kings. Okay, that's all I have. Councilmember Bolton?
So, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Scogan, why is Crooners a unique outdoor patio endorsement? I mean, how is it different from the rest of the restaurants? I'm sure your committee met, so you'll be able to answer this question for me. Because I'm trying to figure out how it's unique compared to a couple other ones that have, you know, like, for an example, Broadway Bar and Pizza and.
Your Honor, Councilmember Bolcom, it's a little bit more unique in that it has a bigger, larger grassy lot as opposed to being part of a strip mall or having a small lot with a lot of parking, with the parking lot on it, and you cannot serve alcohol on a parking lot. So because Crooners, the way it's set on the lake, it has the extra lot that allows them to put in a tent. And the parking lot is off to the east, so it's not on their parking lot. So it's kind of a more unique setting. They're looking out on the lake.
Okay. And so it's a tent, and the tent's back enough, far enough from any water there, right? Is there a setback there or something?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Bolkum, this wouldn't, it does meet the setbacks, and it is a temporary structure by its construction, and we have evaluated, and there's not a setback issue here, nor is there a construction issue. There is a flame spread issue that the fire marshal would check for, some of those type things, but it's a bit unconventional in the building world, but setback-wise, it still meets the requirements.
So, but once the tent's up, it stays up and,
No, Mr. Mayor, the Dunsmore room is a very, very popular room for them and one that looks out over the water. And they're very happy to tell us that this is something that, as they see it, would be, they put the tent up and it would be up for the season and then it would come down and that opens up the view to the lake again. And it is interesting because I was picturing this being more kind of like a yurt with a floor in it and kind of a year-round tent type of a situation. They truly are going to take advantage of the nice weather by even not having the sides up. They'll have the top up in case they get sprinkles and that kind of thing. They will have side skirts that they can close if they need to for inclement weather. But for a lot of their events, they're going to take advantage from the inside of the view through the tent to the water. They'll have a stage inside. The top of the tent actually helps cover from inclement weather, and the sides of the tent would be pulled in the event that they had some strong winds coming across or something like that.
so there's no way for, if the tent sides are up, that someone can come in from out?
It will also have a fence around it.
Okay.
So they've carefully designed this. They've thought through controlling. One of the things that they pointed out is that they keep a careful count on their head count, because the quality and type of bands they have really also look to take a share of the head count. So it's not just the ticket, but it's also how popular they were and how many people they drew in. So they want to make sure everyone's being counted and not coming in through the parking lot or some other means.
And because of course, we remember years ago where there was a resident that had a tent in his backyard. So this is a tent that structurally can withstand wind and storms and that
Yes.
type of thing, correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Bolkum, this is a tent that was designed to allow for special events. It would be very, very similar to one that you would have if you had a fancy outdoor wedding and you were having that in a tent. This is very much that same type of a structure.
Great, thank you. So the rest of my questions are related to, well, it seems like we have this failed alcohol compliance going on here, and then one of them failed twice. So I did ask the city manager previous to this meeting, maybe you could explain to us what's going on, because not only that, there's the failed alcohol compliance, and one of them has failed 2 years in a row. And then the other thing is, one of the ones that's on the, for a liquor license tonight is a very, very tight 40-60 on their alcohol and food. So maybe you could elaborate on what's going to be going on with the public safety?
Certainly, Mayor and Council, what happens is that the police department works very closely with the owners to reaffirm what the requirements are, requiring them to get additional training for their staff to make sure that they are, in fact, being able to enforce the laws appropriately, detect any underage drinking, and then with regard to the sales, there's nothing more we can do other than to remind the owners that the city of Fridley has a requirement that they need to, that we don't license bars. We license restaurants to have alcohol. And that's just the only thing we can do is just to continue to remind them that is a requirement that they would have to fulfill.
Your Honor, if I might, Two Stooges actually failed a tobacco, not a liquor license.
Okay.
So it was just Broadway and Crooners that failed the liquor license.
Well, and
compliance check.
King's Restaurant failed alcohol compliance check.
Yeah, King's too.
So it's not just, I wasn't.
Oh,
talking-
yeah, it's just, I'm sorry, it's not listed on my graph.
Okay, yeah.
They-
And then, the Banquets of Minnesota said that they were never open. When they went there, they were doing it, they probably do them all in one night or something. Why don't we go back when they are open? We know when they have events. I mean, they didn't fail because they weren't open those nights. Is there a way to, I mean, it's just a question I have. It's not, I'm not necessarily asking for an answer tonight, but.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll certainly look into that.
It just
They-
seemed a little odd that, because they're not open all the time, because depending upon their events, they're probably open on weekends, and so.
Generally, what happens is that the word gets out that we're out there making the compliance checks, and after a certain amount of time, the undercoverness, I guess, is a little bit lost, but we certainly make note of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then one more, I do send out with their liquor license a letter about the food to liquor sales, reminding them that we like to see it well over 40% if possible. So that letter does go out as a reminder with their license.
And Deb, you probably remember from previous years, there was an establishment that we weren't sure that the numbers were really even accurate. So I'm not saying that happened
Yeah.
here, but it's good that you send out a letter to
They all
remind them.
have to have a CPA statement telling us what their gross food to liquor is now.
So- But that one's pretty tight, 41 to, yes, thank you.
I do have a comment and maybe a response out of it. So I think with this, if this is allowed for the tent situation with crooners, and I'm not opposed to it, quite frankly, but I think we'll reawaken at least with one of our existing liquor license operators who has wanted to do outdoor events periodically every year in the summertime. And yes, they would have to set up a tent then. I think that they wanted open air, which has some issues with noise and other things and containment. A tent and a fence around it obviously would contain it. Yes, they'd have to have it on a parking lot. They don't have the large grassy area. But I think that would probably, the argument or the debate might be is that, do they have proof of parking? Because other commercial buildings in the area have parking lots that aren't used in the evenings when they would typically hold these outdoor or tent activities. So they could probably easily prove that there's enough parking if they have some type of, I see the shaking of heads, you can't do that, huh?
Your Honor, by Minnesota statute, liquor's not allowed in the parking lots.
So the
They
difference
could
is
put
the
up a
yard
tent and
versus the
serve.
asphalt.
They could put up a tent and serve food, but they can't serve alcohol.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, it needs to be contiguous to the building, as Ms. Cogan had mentioned earlier. And remember, they walk out through the patio on this one and into the tent, not through the parking lot and into a tent.
Yeah, I get it. So I'm thinking of, in particular, Two Stooges.
Yes.
They have access via their patio, and they could put the tent right up against the curb or that patio.
It can't be placed on the parking lot and serve
Well,
alcohol.
so the distinction is asphalt versus grass.
Mr. Mayor,
State law.
you'd be hard pressed, I would be hard pressed, to find another facility in Fridley that actually has a yard. Crooners has a yard. This is about like a large lake house on the lake lot.
Sure.
With a yard going down to the lake, and imagine putting a tent for a wedding at the lake house. That's what's happening here, unlike putting it in the parking lot. And so there's curb and gutter. People aren't used to driving in this area. They shouldn't be driving in this area. It's the backyard of the building.
Still seems like it's asphalt versus grass. This seems like the distinction in my mind, because if they have.
It's a state, but it's a state law.
Get it. Well, it's usually about asphalt is a parking lot. Get that. And that, but if they have huge parking lots or proof of parking, then I think the issue in my mind goes away.
I would
Apparently not.
say, I would say, to just openly speculate here, that part of it is the practice of putting something in a drive lane where you're used to driving and mixing that with the service of alcohol. And in that particular example that you give, Mr. Mayor, they don't have ample parking. They do have a parking issue there, so they're displacing parking. They would be putting it potentially in a drive aisle where people are used to driving. There's all sorts of risks, and I think that the state takes that into account when they're thinking about putting a tent in the parking lot versus a situation like this where people aren't used to driving there. Frankly, if somebody's driving in the backyard of Crooners, there are other problems. So,
Okay, I just suspect that I may be approached in the near future, because this might open that window, and so I
And
Mayor,
now
we're
you
trying to
know the
help you with your
answers.
I
answers.
want to have my ducks in a row when they come forward and say, if they can do it, why
Scott can
can't
give you a
I?
little, Scott
be
can
glad.
give you a little bullet points.
Yes.
Okay. All right,
If it's so in order, I move the 2019-20 liquor license renewals found on pages, I guess, 86 to 90. That encompasses it, I guess, right?
we have a motion, do we have a second?
I can second
Second.
that.
I heard Councilmember Tilbury first, so.
Oh,
We have a motion, we have a second, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
aye.
Aye. And those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gogan. Next item is public hearing, number 9, vacation request for, well, I'll let the presenter give that out. So do we have a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make the motion to open the public hearing on a preliminary plat request, PS 19-01 by US Home Corporation.
And we
Second.
also usually include
Second.
the reading.
And waive the reading.
Thank you.
And
And I
I'll
heard a
second that.
second?
Yep.
Okay, we have a second.
Councilmember do it.
All those in favor to open the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and those opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. If you're okay with this, I would like to make the public hearing presentation along with pointing out that there is an attached resolution to vacate, and that'll be part of this presentation as well. This request is part of a redevelopment of the former City Hall site. It's the property at 6431 University Avenue that we're very familiar with. The service drive and some excess pieces of property of Fifth Street and Formies Avenue were vacated on January 7th, 2019. This property is also being replatted at this time. Upon further review of the replat, the city staff and the surveyor determined that an existing stormwater easement on the property also needs to be vacated and then redirected or rededicated on the new plat. Doing this makes a clean and concise record of the location of the easement on that property. This gives you a little bit of a sense of where it is, although I'm gonna have to talk you through it. This is a drawing that just has very few lines on it. The shaded area in yellow here is a utility easement that crosses the Fridley Plaza area near Formies, where Formies, basically very near the clinic building south of us. Through the surveying process and putting this under a microscope, we determined that that would still exist if we went through all of the other exercises to vacate that we had talked about and had gone through earlier. We want to make sure this is clean and takes care of it for the final plating process. Staff recommends that the City Council hold the public hearing to vacate SAV 1901 and approve a corresponding resolution in your packet on pages 92 through 95 in a separate action. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have, and please do feel free to ask. I see some puzzled looks about the map particularly maybe, and I'll be glad to further explain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hickok. Do council have questions? Seems pretty straightforward. Nobody has any questions, I guess a motion would be in order.
I'd like to make the motion for the public hearing on a vacation request.
Well, we'd have to probably close the public hearing, right?
Close the
Is
public
there any
hearing.
persons in the audience that wishes to address the council on this public hearing? None?
Aye.
And no comments, so then close the public hearing. Sorry.
All right, I'd like to make the motion to close that public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? And now, a motion,
The resolution.
now on the resolution.
I'd like to make a motion for the resolution to vacate a storm sewer easement for the property generally located at 6431 University Avenue Northeast, petitioned by the City of Fridley's Housing and Redevelopment Authority on pages 92 to 95. I'll second that.
Thank you. Do we have any final discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed, the motion also carries. Which leads us to item number 10, under the public hearings. Do we have a motion to open that public hearing?
I'd like to also make a motion for the public hearing on S-2 Master Plan, MP number 19-01 by U.S. Home Corporation, DBA Lennar, to amend an S-2 Master Plan for the parcel of land generally located east and south of the Civic campus, generally located at 7071 University Avenue Northeast, to allow for the construction of a 72-unit townhome development.
And waive the reading?
And waive the
And
reading.
waive the reading.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Now another presentation, I assume?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if it would please the council, I would make both presentations here in one, and then we'll have a separate action on each of the items for the master plan and the plat.
Thank you.
The request is, the petitioner is here this evening, and they are requesting two land use items to allow for the construction of a 72-unit townhome development on the land south and east of the Civic campus here. First item is an S2 master plan approval, and the second is a plat to create outlots. The construction would consist of 16 townhome buildings. Each would have 4 to 5 units and 2 garage stalls with surface parking as well. The additional parking is being provided for visitors. Southern portion will have 2 access points onto Locke Parkway, and the northern portion will have 1 access onto Locke Parkway and 1 onto 71st Avenue. The internal streets will be privately owned and maintained by the homeowners association. They will be landscaped, the property will be landscaped. We'll have internal sidewalk maintenance and snow removal. To give you a bit of a sense of the layout of the development, you can see here on your screen, the townhomes are in the area where you see the most green, south of the pond and east of our Public Works facility. There's 2 different shades of color. There is a 2-story unit and a 3-story row home being illustrated here. There is a note here also that the remainder of the trail around the ponds with a connection through this development will also be constructed as part of this development. The type of units will be the carriage urban row, which is 2.5 stories mainly situated along the parkway. There are 36 individual units, so it will range in size from 16 to 1,900 square feet. They will have up to 3 bedrooms and 2.5 bathrooms. It is anticipated that these units will sell for between $275,000 and $300,000. The next type is the Colonial Patriot. This is a 2-story building that is situated along the pond. There are 36 of these individual units, and they'll range from 1,700 feet to 1,800 square feet. Up to 3 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms in these units. The anticipated price range for these units will be $285,000 to $315,000. S2 master plan analysis, you'll remember this, that when a property is zoned S2 redevelopment district, it requires an accompanying site plan that becomes the master plan for that development. Once the master plan is approved, any modification to that master plan requires a master plan amendment. The intent of the S2 district is to provide the city with site plan review authority and to determine if the proposed project meets the goals and objectives of the city's comprehensive plan. The proposed project does, in this case, meet the intent of what the city was hoping to see for the last phase of this Civic campus development. S2 master planning is very much like the planned unit developments that you may remember we've referred to in the past, where standard zoning is set aside in exchange for, in this case, master planning. So standard setbacks and those types of things might be exchanged for higher amenities, exchanged for density possibly, for other trails and other things through the development that might not otherwise have happened through a standard zoning. In the pre-plat analysis, we determined that the replat will create 22 new outlots. 16 for each townhome building. Outlots A and T are for private roadways within the development. Outlots D, K, and O are for trail connections and green space. And outlot P is to re-describe the boundary of the pond. The trail and green area along the west side of the development all will be owned by the city.
Scott, even on my screen here, I can't see it in my photo in the book is, can you just go over those again, please?
Sure.
Point them out.
Sure, absolutely. Outlots A and T, let me see if I can get the mouse here for you.
I don't know.
Outlots A and T are for the roadways within the development.
Okay.
You'll see that on the area south of the pond, for example, through the kind of central core of the development, there's an east-west roadway, and then there are some short streets that serve townhome units that are perpendicular to the parkway. Up on the development east of Public Works, you see there's kind of a central spine roadway again that runs north and south, and then it goes out to the parkway. As we were talking about those connection points, there is a connection point out to 71st. There is a connection point to the new parkway that's being located in this development area. Outlots D, K, and O are for trail connections. And P is to describe a boundary along the pond edge and also to create an area here where this is open area that will belong to the city and be part of that kind of pond development where certainly a small park-like feature can exist. Going back to D, K, and O, remember there was an interest in having trail connections so that neighbors to the south, for example, can come up. They can use the plaza area. They can walk around the pond and so forth. So you'll see the green shaded area through the center. That is landscaped area that will take you along the edge of the pond there, up through the development from the parkway, and be dedicated as a public access opportunity. There are a couple other points where the public can cross and make certain access onto the trail that goes around the pond. So each of these outlots are really purposeful in that they allow us to invite the public in, and also really from a platting perspective, it makes this townhouse development just much more vital and exciting, having those connections to public ways, trails, the regional trail, et cetera. Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Balcom, I hope that helps.
It did, thanks. It's tough when you have something that you can't read.
Yeah,
all
it's
in your packet.
it's pretty small, and I apologize. I appreciate your patience on that. Planning Commission did review this. The city code requires one public hearing to be held for an amendment to the S2 master plan and for the plat, the preliminary plat, which typically occurs at the Planning Commission meeting. It also requires that the public hearing notice be published in the newspaper at least 10 days prior to the public hearing. On March 7th, 2019, the city received a letter from the Sun Focus stating that even though we met the deadline for publication for the public hearing for these two items, MP 1901 and PS 1901, they didn't get it published due to a pagination error in their production of the newspaper. So, as a result, the public hearing for these two items will be held tonight. We went through the proper publication process and announced this public hearing so that the public did have an opportunity to speak in spite of the fact that the Sun Focus did fail to get that notice in for the Planning Commission. At the Planning Commission's meeting, they did review both land use items, and they unanimously recommended approval of MP 1901 and PS 1901. Again, one is the master plan MP, the PS is for the plat. Staff recommends concurrence with the Planning Commission and approval of the S2 master plan and the MP 1901, which is the plat. And their resolution is found in the packet on page 105 through 112. Staff recommends concurrence with the Planning Commission of the preliminary plat as well, PS 1901, with a stipulation in your packet on page 114. Mr. Mayor, Council, as you know, each of these items do require a separate action on your part. And I'd be glad to answer any questions you have at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hickok. Does the council have questions?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Shoot.
Mr. Hickok, could you flip back to the color site plan?
Sure.
And my question relates, I think this is just kind of a rendering of the site plan.
It is, yes.
What caught my eye was just the trail around the pond.
Yes. Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Eggert, I think I understand what you're saying is that, are you confused maybe by the color, the blue? It almost looks like the pond is larger than it is here, or?
No, just the trail around the pond
Okay.
looks different than what I've seen in the past.
Are you looking at that screen right there, Steve?
No, the
Okay.
color site plan,
No, not this bit, not this screen.
That's the other one.
Not what you're seeing here?
way back when you
Oh, I'm
started.
sorry. I'm
On
sorry.
page 96, are you talking about?
Page 96, Scott.
Is that what you're talking about, Steve?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry. Here we go.
Scott, this is what you're looking at?
Yeah, I'm looking at the trail
Okay, very
with
good.
the townhouses there, and I see the pond, and it looks different than, I'm trying to picture myself walking around the pond when I come here to the city.
Okay. Well,
And it looks different to me here.
can you help describe different in what way? And I can tell you,
If I go out to the City Hall Plaza,
Mm-hmm.
how do I navigate around the pond?
okay. Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Eggert, there is a pathway along, let's start at the building itself, at our building itself, and you'll notice down in the area where there's nearly a 90-degree angle and a walkway down to it, there is the amphitheater,
Yeah.
which has a concrete walkway that will take you either direction from that amphitheater. If you're starting at the amphitheater and you're going east, you'll go east along the pond edge. It loops up kind of in an artsy manner. It
Yep.
takes you around some grasses and some other native vegetation that will be planted there. And currently, there isn't a paved walkway. There is intended to be a paved walkway, though, that runs then south of our Public Works facility where the tree-lined walkway is there that you'll see. That trail would take you then all the way over to, what you're seeing there is the parkway shaded in gray. You'll go over to basically a trail that will take you right along the edge of the parkway, and the pond will be then on your west side, the parkway will be on your east side. You'll walk down that trail, you'll walk around that southern tip where that pond kind of bootlegs to the south. You'll walk around the tip of that pond and come back then to the north. You see the green space between the units then that are lined up formally around that southern edge of the pond, and there is a gray trail that's indicated here that does have a walkway connection about halfway through the townhome development that allows people to go from the parkway through the development and to get to that walk loop. You can continue then to the west to that smallest teardrop-shaped pond that is south of City Hall. It kind of separates City Hall from that larger green space. That green space is what I was describing. That is an outlot that is going to be held by the city. It will allow us an opportunity to have another small park-like feature there and an opportunity to really engage this opportunity, this land around here. And it also allows a view into that kind of beautiful pond vista that you'll be seeing. Remembering we'll have lighted aerator fountains and whatnot. It'll be quite dramatic as you're able to look through that area. And that was the purpose of kind of holding the townhomes back, leaving that little park feature for a lot of public enjoyment along that edge.
That's nice.
Does that help, Mr. Eggert?
I think I had just missed how you connect over to the very west edge there.
The west, okay,
Yeah.
sure.
And
Yes.
right now, you see a tree there, but the paths connect there.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Hickok, just verbiage on page 96,
Yes.
the second paragraph. And it's also on the master plan analysis. I think the word should be, so it says, it's like the second sentence there, or third sentence. When this property was rezoned last year, a master plan hadn't been developed for the site, I think, instead of development. It says that there, and it also says that on page 101. Maybe we just want to change the words to, do you see where I'm talking about? Scott, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
maybe just
Mr. Mayor.
change those words to
develop.
developed instead of
Yes.
development. They're,
Thank you.
because they were that way in the, also in the planning commission.
Planning Commission's
stuff.
packet
Yeah,
as
so-
well. Thank
And then
you.
it, so again, on page 101, under the S2 master, just change that to develop.
Thank you.
This is exciting.
It is.
It's an exciting process here.
We have,
Just a question, Mr. Hickok.
Yes.
Probably doesn't relate directly to this development. It might be Pulte's patio homes. I've been asked several times from people about that park that we're going to install.
yes, good,
To
thank
the
you.
west of the Pulte homes, right about where the curve in the boulevard is.
Yes.
Do you have an answer about what, and who's responsible for putting that in and about what timeline we're talking about?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, thank you. The city and through its Park and Recreation efforts, through its Community Services Division, is working closely with the Public Works folks and the Community Development staff to work out precisely the location and also the park features that will go in there. We know that it's in a very nice location that is just past the curve, east of the, what I'll call the elbow of that parkway going then north. And it's on more flat land, right behind the units. If you've taken a look at those units, they're walkout units and it slopes when you get right past the units. Then there's this kind of nice highland that's flat, it's level. You can almost picture the park in there right now. That is the area that we have talked to the Anoka County Parks folks. We have, with our engineering folks, our public works staff and all, looked preliminarily at that as the best location. Exactly how it's going to be laid out, exactly how it's going to be designed, we're still working out those details.
So do you feel that would be next year that we would be putting that in, or would it, is there plans for yet this year before the snow flies?
Realistically, I think next year is probably right. You're going to see a lot of construction happening here, and for a lot of reasons, I think we want to make sure that we're going to get the trail in around the pond and some of those features. And we're going to be encouraging lots of activity here, kids and everything else. But during the construction, probably our best bet is to set that out for a
That's all I really need to know, if that was something that
2021.
we were planning to do yet this year, or probably 2020. And
2020.
with all the projects that are going on there now and this summer and continuing to next year,
Yeah.
I'm not in the least bit surprised. So
Yeah.
just want to have an answer when I get asked again. So.
Yes, we haven't forgotten, and I think that's a really important thing, because I think folks, they certainly have been good about their support and their trust that park was moved, but it doesn't go away, and we certainly have not forgotten that.
All right, great, thank you. This is a public hearing. If the council is done with their questions, I just ask if there's anybody in the audience that wishes to address the council on this issue. And certainly, sir, this is your time to, give us a little advertisement, if nothing else.
Sure. Thank you, Josh Metzer with Lennar, out of the Plymouth office. Mayor and members of council, we're just very happy to be here tonight. We know staff is very excited about the project. It's good to hear that council is as well, and we are too, very excited. I guess what I could add is maybe some timeline, if you have questions on that. We're hoping to get final plat approval here in the next 3 weeks to a month. And as soon as we can get things recorded, try to get started on grading, probably end of May, early June. And then street and utility work towards the end of the summer. And hopefully starting on a model, since we have 2 product lines, possibly 2 models by fall, with model hopefully being ready by February next year for the spring parade. And sales beginning then as well.
Great. I imagine it's a little bit interesting or encouraging to see that what Pulte's been building there, and that's been selling very well.
Yes, very well.
And I would assume that Lennar is hopeful that it will be selling robustly too.
Right, of course. Yeah, it's great to hear that Pulte's doing well. We have a couple of developments with similar products, one in Brooklyn Park and one in Maple Grove that are just down the 610 corridor that have been doing very well, about the same pace that Pulte has been selling theirs. About
Great.
halfway through our inventory, and we just opened for sales last year, so
Great.
very encouraging.
Well, like the product, and I'm certain that it will do well.
We hope so.
We're excited as well as the staff.
Great deal.
Any other comments, questions from council? If not, a motion would be in order to
Close the
close the
meeting.
public hearing.
I'll make the motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
I don't think this is done yet.
A motion, a second. If there's no other discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? The motion carries. Secondarily, we need a motion for the resolution approving the master plan.
I will make a motion for that too, Mr. Mayor, for a resolution approving an S2 master plan amendment, MP number 1901 for U.S. Home Corporation, DBA Lennar, on behalf of the property owner, the City of Fridley Housing and Redevelopment Authority, to allow the redevelopment of the property generally located south and east of the Fridley Civic Campus at 7071 University Avenue Northeast. And it's on pages, I believe, 96 through 112 in our packet.
Close enough?
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it's just the resolution and
Master plan,
105
master
through.
plan,
The rest is
plan.
background, right?
Yeah,
112,
it's done.
Yeah,
so 105 through.
105 through 112.
Okay, all right.
I'll
Make
second
note-
that.
Good, I'm.
Okay, thank you. Any final discussion, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Which leads us to item number 11. We'll have to open that public hearing too. Mr. Hickok, were you planning on making some comments on this one as well? Item number 11, you
Yes, yes,
set them together, but they're
thank you.
clearly related, so
Thank you,
we'll
Mr.
open
Mayor.
this public hearing because I think we have to do that, so.
Well, yes, and as I had mentioned, the presentation really included a discussion on the plat as well. What's important to know about this is
Wait.
that,
Let's open the public hearing
Yeah,
and then you
I
can talk.
think we gotta open the public hearing, even though
Okay.
you've made
Okay.
one presentation, but we still have to have the public hearing, close it, and then make the next motion, so. Then we'll take your comments, thank you. So with that being said, public hearing number 11, do we have a motion to open that public hearing
I'll
and
move
waive
to
that
open the
reading?
public hearing
And waive that reading,
and waive the reading.
thank you. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? The motion carries. And now, Mr. Hickok, your comments.
thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. This is very straightforward. This is a plat process really that allows what you'll see as construction basically starting on the western edge of this development and working eastward. Part of that is just allowing time to finish up the soil work that is happening mid-site. So you will see that the first portion of this is platted, and they will be starting with the first 16 units and then moving their way eastward across the site, and eventually they'll end up on the east side of Public Works with the last of the units to be constructed. As a plat goes, this is very, very common. They will start on one end, they'll plat for that, and they'll move eastward.
Sure. Okay,
Other than that, I think it's
Pretty
been pretty well
straightforward.
contained in the site plan.
great. Thank you. Council have any questions regarding the plat request? Any persons in the audience? Sir, do you need to make any comment? Okay. Sorry, you want to get out of here, right? Okay. With that, a motion would be in order to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. And those opposed? The motion carries. And now a motion.
And now the motion I'd like to make to am I working on the preliminary?
Yep, correct.
Approved preliminary plat request, PS 19-01 by U.S. Home Corporation, TBA Lennar, pages 113 to 116, or thereabouts.
Second.
Yeah, I'm just gonna take a look here and see where the actual resolution is. I don't see it either. Okay, we've got, we've got it mentioned, on the pages that are applicable, so we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed, the motion also carries. Moving right along, under item number 12, the preliminary assessment hearing for the street rehabilitation project.
Moved over the public hearing, waive the reading.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, the motion carries.
I should have given that.
Mr. Mayor, if you'll indulge my presentation on this project.
Sorry.
I have Brandon Brodhag here, who's the project engineer for this as well. So each year, we perform major rehabilitation on select streets and neighborhoods according to our pavement management plan. And this year, we'll be working on streets around the Civic campus. On October 8th of last year, the City Council authorized initiation of the project. And here's a map of our long-range street resurfacing plan, and the inset shows those streets for 2019. Staff has developed a feasibility report that evaluated the streets in the area and considered conditions, utility improvements, and other typical elements that may be incorporated into the project. The candidate streets located in Ward 1 include 69th Avenue, University Avenue, East Service Road basically from University, south of 69th to 73rd, 71st Avenue. So as you can see, they bound our campus and the development that was aforementioned. So the work elements include removal of pavement, reclaim or milling the pavement, and sidewalk connections from the city campus on 71st north to 73rd Avenue on the east side of the University Service Drive. We're planning a walk there. Also on the north side of 71st from East University Service Drive to the east to the park. There'll be a walk connection there as well, and actually to the parkway. Water main and hydrant replacements will be part of the work. Storm sewer and drainage work. We'll have a closure of access from 69th Avenue to University Avenue East Service Road as part of this, which is part of the overall development plan for the Pulte development. We have curb replacement and repaving of streets. And we only do spot curb replacement, so wherever it meets our criteria for removal and replacement, if it's a grade issue, if it's severely cracked, so on and so forth. And then restoration. So our tentative early schedule, I think this was presented to you with the feasibility report. We could do advanced utility work in June and July. Construction is pushed back to August through October because of the development activity. We're dependent on that development activity to complete. So we've also set a second schedule off to the right in the event that we don't approach completion by August with the Lock Parkway and the other development pieces that are required to move traffic around. So you'll see the final hearing would either be in October of this year or October of 2020, depending on our completion. Notice of assessment, same, and assessments would begin that following January with either schedule. We held an open house on January 22nd. Preliminary information was presented to the property owners and residents affected by the construction, not just those that are being assessed. The neighborhood south of 69th as well would be impacted by the construction. 47 notices were mailed, 12 persons attended, and feedback was gathered and incorporated into the feasibility report. The project was well received generally. There were some good suggestions for a better project. Questionnaire was available to attendees. We encouraged those that couldn't attend to contact us to
get a copy of the questionnaire. They were all mailed copies, but in the event that they didn't fill one out or theirs went missing, glad to provide them with another one. The feasibility report outlined the project budget and schedule and provides some detail on the extent of construction. And it concluded that the project is cost-effective, necessary, and feasible. Here's the project budget for the 2019-01 project, $762,000 total. 360 plus thousand coming from the city through our municipal state aid. That's funded by gas tax dollars. 73,095 assessment to adjacent properties, 138,000 from the water utility fund, 98,000 from the stormwater utility fund, 16,000 from the sanitary sewers fund, and 75,000 from an allocation for trail walk upgrades. There's two different accessible parcel categories, the LDR, low density residential, or non-LDR, also known as commercial. Generally, properties are assessed for street rehabilitation only. Properties with driveways on the project streets are assessed. Corner lots are assessed on one side only. An assessment is based on a proportion of the assessable work that's done in front of parcels. And for multi-unit residential properties up to 4 units, pay the lower of the commercial rate or the residential rate, reduced by 50% for each unit over 1. Sounds complicated, but basically if you have 2 units, it's a 1.5 times assessment. 3 units is 2. So here's a recent history of assessments, including the estimated 2018-01. That project is yet to get underway. And the 2019-01, so we're seeing these estimated assessments falling in line with prior years. And note that all LDR or residential units receive equal assessment. So the non-LDR, I'll summarize this slide really quickly. Properties are assessed for street rehabilitation only. They pay based on the cost of the street rehabilitation in front of their property or abutting their property and their side. So intersections are taken care of by the city. And so this is an estimate at $31 per lineal foot for this project, a little bit less than our estimate for 2018-01, but still kind of in the same range that we've had historically. Payment options, council's aware of these. Residents can pay within 30 days of the final assessment hearing, or they can have it added to their property taxes paid over 10 years. Interest rate to be determined, typically 5.5% to 6.5%. I think it's prime plus 2. And I'm looking at the finance director, and hopefully he's in concurrence with that, but I believe that's what it is. And then senior citizens that meet certain criteria may have the assessment deferred until future sale of the property. So there will be details provided to folks at the time of the final assessment hearing for the project, should it go through and go ahead today. So our request is that we continue the preliminary assessment hearing and hear those, and not officially continue, but just keep going on the preliminary assessment hearing and hear those who desire to address the council. And if so in order, move to adopt the attached resolution in tonight's agenda, which directs preparation of final plans and advertisement for bids for the project following the preliminary assessment hearing. I'll also note that I received an email that I shared with you from a resident at 571 Rice Creek Boulevard Northeast in regard to the estimated assessment and her notice of estimated assessment. And so I'd ask you that you read that into the record, and so we have a complete record of response.
Thank you, Mr. Kozlutcher. So with that, the council have any questions?
Yeah, I have some questions. Jim, you mentioned, excuse me, the email that was sent to you today by Ms. Kaner at 571 Rice Creek Boulevard.
Why don't we just, if you're bringing that portion up, why don't you bring it in,
I
make
will.
a
Well, actually,
motion to
Mr.
approve it in the
Tilbury,
record.
because it's his ward, was gonna,
I'll
Read it
go
in.
ahead and make that motion. I'll make the motion to move this into the record.
Okay.
the
This
email.
email letter regarding this issue into the record for this evening.
Oh, do we have any way to put it up on the screen or anything?
Why?
let's say, hang on a second. So you made a motion to
I
bring.
seconded it.
You seconded it. Let's vote on it.
Okay.
All those in favor to accept this into the record from Elise Gainer? Say, motion by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and those opposed, motion carries. Now,
Okay.
Councilmember Barnett.
Yeah, I have some questions with regard to this as well. And I won't read the entire email that she sent, but basically she's objecting to the proposed special assessment of $2,245 on her property. And as she says, as you may know, my home is a corner lot which fronts Rice Creek Boulevard. Legal address is 571 Rice Creek Boulevard. Yes, my garage faces 69th Avenue, but I will no doubt use about 25 feet of the roadway and then turn onto the newly extended Rice Creek Boulevard to enter and exit the area. It says, furthermore, a home on the Rice Creek Boulevard with a driveway accessing 69th Avenue directly across the street is not subject to the proposed assessment. How is this not discriminatory? It says, although I find some recompense in knowing that should Rice Creek Boulevard be resurfaced, paved in the future in front of my home, I will not be assessed a second time. I strongly believe I should be assessed only once, according to my legal street address, which is Rice Creek Boulevard, and not my driveway access. I ask you to reconsider and remove any proposed assessment on my property to fund the 69th Avenue Northeast project. I will, however, be more than willing to pay my share for a future resurfacing of Rice Creek Boulevard. It says, thank you for your time and consideration. A question I might have, Jim, is she mentions the home directly across the street, which is a driveway that apparently goes on to 69th as well. Are they not assessed?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Barnett, I'm not sure if we can pull up this map. It's not in a presentation, but if we can link the map here. Shows Ms. Keener's property. And basically, the property across the street has a horseshoe drive, so it has two accesses. It has an access on 69th and an access on Rice Creek Boulevard.
Correct.
In that case, according to our policy, we would assess based on the address when there's more than one access point.
Jim, is this, I just kind of recall, and been on here for a long time, that if you lived on a corner lot, you were only assessed based on your address. Now, her address is 571 Rice Creek Boulevard, and she's being assessed for 69th Avenue. When did that change?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Barnett, that's always been in our street rehabilitation policy since about 2006, before my time. But at least since 2009, I'm well aware of it. And it's the reason, I don't know if you had a copy of my letter in response to Ms. Keener, but
Yes, I do.
the reason for that is that basically, for instance, in her case, she may not use Rice Creek Boulevard at all, and thereby may claim no benefit from the project if Rice Creek Boulevard were to be repaved, because she never touches it. She doesn't need to anyway. She may, and she does say in her email that she does, but you know, we don't know people's habits and so on and so forth. We know that she drives on 69th. We know that she uses 69th, and so that's why the policy is written that way. And so I believe that she's only being, I was very clear with her that if Rice Creek Boulevard were to be redone, she would not be assessed there.
Oh, I understand that. She
According to
does
the
too.
policy.
Yeah.
And that the neighbor, I did explain to her that the neighbor across the street had a horseshoe drive, and so while they have an access to 69th as well, they would not be, the preferential assessment is toward the street address in the case of multiple driveways. Now, if the property across the street had, let's say there was another road and they had a cut through, boy, I don't know, we've never seen that, but you know, if it was on two side streets. But this is not uncommon. It's not the majority of our parcels. The majority of our parcels access from their street address, but on corner lots, sometimes this can happen. This also is fairly common with townhomes and commercial development. And there's times when commercial development has parcels internal even that have zero access to any roadway, but through another parcel. You know, at that times, it gets pretty complicated, but we do manage to assess by area or use some other method to make it equitable.
Okay, that answers one of my questions, although not to my satisfaction, I guess, but
Well, why, Mr. Barnett, let's go back to that. This has been the policy for some time. Why is it not to your satisfaction?
well, my understanding, and I don't recall this ever coming up before, but
Numerous times.
it has, huh?
Yeah.
You remember
I've been
that?
on the council for a while, too.
You remember this has
Yes.
come up before?
Yes.
Okay, I did. Okay, my second question is, with the map on page 119, showing the reconstruction of 69th Avenue, et cetera, it seems to me there was a discussion at one time that 69th Avenue would not have access onto the surface road. This shows that it does. Has there been a change in what we talked about?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Barnett, no, it's not. These are the streets that exist that are to be resurfaced, so, or removed, I guess. You know, we don't typically take out sections of the street, but the plan is still to dedicate that right-of-way to stormwater improvements and so on that are required by the development, and to have that street cut off. And basically 69th would dead end then west of Rice Creek Boulevard, west of the west leg of Rice Creek Boulevard, if that makes sense.
So in other words, all of the homes on Rice Creek Boulevard to go up to 69th will then have to access through the new development up to the new Lock Lake Parkway.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Barnett, that's absolutely correct. Lock Lake Parkway will now be the collector for those trips rather than 69th.
Yeah, Bob, this, the lines showing here are talking about existing streets and whether it's being repaved, as 95% of it is, versus removing a short section of street that's been
It
planned.
doesn't show removing it, it shows it being done.
No, I think this one is mainly just here to show you which one parcels are being assessed.
Mr. Mayor,
Just wanna
Councilmember
break-
Barnett and Councilmember Volkem, I would say that our map could have been better put together to show that break. You know, we have a line showing streets to be resurfaced, if you really look at it, but we know that in our plans that, you know, that it really is a street subject to construction, but it's gonna be removed.
Yeah, if you look, and what I saw out of this map was with the slanted lines, that there's 4 parcels on 69th, 570, or 571 is slashed, and so is the 2 down at the bottom of the cul-de-sac, my neighbor and myself, and then also the Baptist church. So the rest of them are showing no dashes or slotted
No, I
lines.
understand that, but,
Okay, that was the purpose of this thing.
okay, but
It's
this
the
map,
assessment.
this map would indicate, at least to me, that you could access from 69th onto the surface road. Now, Jim, you're saying that's not gonna happen.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Barnett, you're correct. That's not gonna happen.
Okay.
The construction plans will not maintain that connection. And that was as planned with the plat of the new development and so on and so
Well, I
forth. That's
remember
already
that.
been
That's
approved
why
by the
I
council.
was questioning
so.
why the map shows that it was. Okay,
I think Mr. Kozlucher says that this is the assessment, but they could have done a better job of showing it, that it's not there anymore. So,
Any other questions, Councilmember Barnett?
no,
Okay. Any other comments from others?
do you have any?
Mr. Mayor, can I speak
Yeah.
to the email as well? While this is a good email and it's great to have the communication and correspondence, the matter or the subject of the email is really about the assessment. We aren't asking for the council's decision on the assessment here tonight. We're asking for the council's decision on whether the project should go forward. So I would recommend that you consider this email, but, you know, I would consider its bearing on whether you want the project to go forward or not. That's what we're requesting tonight. If there's other action that the council would like staff to take, we can certainly, you know, follow up on that.
Sure, point being that when we come back to us with the assessment hearing, that's the time for this email, but obviously she's trying to talk to us now to engage us in this conversation we're having right now.
Mr.
And-
Mayor, yes, and Ms. Kaner was very, cordial with me and, very, I appreciate her getting in touch with us early.
Obviously, the email was suggesting that she wants to kick this assessment down the road, which, if she's still there when we redo Rice Creek Boulevard, the assessment will be higher because costs don't go down generally, they generally go up. I understand her reasoning, but we're in this process for more than a decade now of that we have a policy in place. I don't know that this warrants that we should change that policy midstream. It would open up another can of worms for those that have had to pay these assessments, and there's been unique or not often cases that have arisen, and so the policy was early on decided on and felt that it was the most fair, and I guess so I would go along with the project and with the understanding that most likely Ms. Kaner can have her day with the assessment, but I think it's pretty clear that the policy is pretty clear, so.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Kozlowitz, I have a few questions. So we heard from Ms. Kaner, and again, should be actually brought up at the assessment hearing when it does happen. Have you been contacted by any other, it's surprising there's no one here, so maybe just one step back. Because there was a public hearing, this actually was delayed because it was another one of those notices that was missed at the focus. So this meeting was moved from this public hearing was moved from March 11th to April 8th. Have we had any contact with any other residents since the neighborhood meeting and tonight's date?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Welcome, the letters went out for both hearings to the affected property owners, so we duplicated efforts on our
Right.
writing. We corrected gave them the revised date and so on and so forth. As far as other less
People that
formal
might be either before
Yeah.
or against the project?
as far as
or-
less formal contact, no. Personally, I haven't had any. I don't, Mr. Brodhag, I don't think has had anything material that has come his way, so, yeah, we really haven't heard a lot.
Okay. Which, I mean, usually see a few people here. And
Well, you're
then,
only assessing 4 properties.
well, I know,
Yeah,
but still.
residential or
Still,
whatever.
but I mean, it's still a neighborhood, you might think that,
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Welcome, I think that has some merit. There's, I don't remember how many properties total that are subject here, but it's, 20 or so. It's not like our typical 2,
Yeah.
3, 400.
and then you mentioned, so if there was anyone that did have any comments, even though this is a public hearing, they still, if they have questions about the whole project, you're there and ready and more than willing to listen to them. And then you said something about that this might not happen, and then the assessment. Do you have any idea when you might be contacting residents if this doesn't go forward, how much of notice they would have? Of course, people are always
Right.
planning different activities in the summer, and do you have any idea when that might happen?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Welcome, we're going with the optimistic schedule until we hear differently, and we'll be notifying affected property owners with that regard. If we reach probably mid-June or a little bit earlier than that, and we're having to hold off because the project schedule for the development is going to interfere and cause issues with, we want folks to have good access to their properties. We don't want to mess that up, and so we've got 2 developers and 2 different contractors working in the same area, so it's going to be a little bit of a juggling act, and this project would take the last seat, after substantial completion, and things that might affect the detour routes would be, out of the way. And so I'd say we'd know like early to mid-June for sure whether that's going to happen. We would, going forward, however, we may know sooner than that. We'll be bidding the project. We'll be alerting the affected property owners, the 47 within the construction area, to what's happening with the award, and then how we're going to move forward and what kind of schedule at that time. So I would say just plan for the optimistic, plan for the August construction, a quick completion, I think you know, I think my staff has an opinion that that's maybe only 50% likely at this point, so.
So depending upon the weather and everything. So then how much do you think it will change? I mean, as far as, because I know the next, one of the next items is related to planning for bids. And so because it might not happen, is this at all a hard bidding process with something like this?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Volcom, we'll make sure that we secure the right bid method to ensure that we'll get the pricing and we'll have it locked down regardless.
Thank you.
I'd like to just go back about I appreciate that you included in your presentation the option for next year, you think, because that is of concern to me that with all those projects going on and all the truck equipment, the last thing I want to hear from is others that, you know, you built this, redid this street, and then you get all that cement trucks and everything else going down on 69th. Now, with the removal of that short section in front of the Baptist church, that probably eliminates them using that obviously that access point. I'm just concerned that we rebuild the street, and if we've got a lot of equipment things going on, you've got the water main project going on there, you got the boulevard project going on, you got Lennar starting, and Pulte's gonna be there all summer. I'm wondering if we're gonna have some difficulties there. So I like that the fact that you're at least putting it on notice that this project may get delayed. So. And I'd be one of those that assess it. I don't want them putting in the street and then having it breaking up, so. I appreciate that.
And I'm gonna show my concern again for the, not exiting 69th onto the service road. That, you can imagine on a Sunday when there's a church service and all of the traffic going through the new Pulte homes, you're gonna get some complaints there as well.
Well, and the one big advantage that I heard from residents, so that they understood that that would create a better ability to access Highway 47, because it now allows for a greater stacking room, because in the past, I've heard it so many times, and I've seen it many times.
I have to.
You get a semi truck, and lo and behold, if you have two, forget it. You can't even get out of your neighborhood until a cycle has come out. It was the same thing when the arenas let out, and there was about 10, 15 minutes that was very tough to get in the queue because the 150 cars left the arena basically at the same time, and there wasn't much stacking room. So, yeah, there's a trade-off. Obviously, you know, we're gonna all have to get used to going a little bit further around to access it. So, unless they put in a driveway or something, but then that's another point of contention right there. So. If there's no other comments, I do, because it's a public hearing, just ask if there's anybody in the audience that wishes to make comment on this issue for the street improvement project. Hearing none and seeing none. Is there any other comments? Motion would be in order to close the public hearing.
I'll make the motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed, motion carries. 12A. Should have probably moved to 13A, but whatever.
No,
Councilmember Balcom.
yeah, let me find my page here a second. I just had a couple of quick questions, sorry. So, Mr. Kozlusher, just have a couple questions. So I understand who's gonna plow and maintain the sidewalk, and then, and we're paying for, or is the city paying for the new traffic light, or? Just wanna make sure I understand what we're getting for, what bang we're getting for a buck, or how does that go?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Volcom, so the Fridley HRA is assisting by providing the funding for the walk, and this would be from 57th Way, which is across from Georgetown Apartments, to the train station on the east side, and basically to 61st. across from Stevenson. Anyway, they're providing funding under this agreement. The city actually will pay Anoka County for the construction and then be reimbursed by the HRA. The city will maintain. So we'll repair, we'll plow, and basically we have the equipment. We're already, this year was challenging to plow the walk that went up to Mississippi, but we got it done. It may not have been pretty at times, but, it was cleared. And then, as far as the signal goes, my understanding is that may be something that's reimbursed in a similar fashion, although those agreements haven't been made. I think the preliminary scoping needs to be done first to determine what actually needs to be done with that signal. That's kind of a first step. Also, just to update you, my understanding is that Anoka County has now advised us that it would be better to program that project for 2020 rather than 2019, because right now, just timing of materials. At this point, we don't have that scoping document, we don't have preliminary plans, and so to even order mast arms and so on and so forth is gonna put us out of schedule for this season. So they're looking toward 2020 for actual reconstruction of the signal there.
So, but we'd still pass this resolution and, because it's gonna happen.
Because the walk construction can happen independent of the signal reconstruction and the intersection, any intersection improvements that need to be done that are associated with that.
It should be easier for the city to maintain and clear this because there's more clearance. I mean, there's more, when we're on the Mississippi part, there's little to no space there to do it, so it should help. And we're just responsible for all of this, right? I mean, it's always the city that, even though this is a county road and everything, right? Is that?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Welcome, that's been a historic way in which business has been done between Fridley and Anoka County with regard to trails, walks, so on and so forth, so.
Okay.
And I understand that these are items of concern, and as we respond to the public about providing facilities for walking and biking and safety, that we take on more of that burden.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at some point I'd like us to maybe at some point discuss some of those with the county, because it truly is their road, and I mean, I think obviously we're plowing it, but it'd be nice if they could share a little bit more in some of those costs, I think, so. All right, I'm off my soapbox now. Anyone else have any questions?
I don't hear any.
Okay. Scott, you weren't coming to talk, were you, about this? Okay.
I missed it.
So in order, I move, a resolution authorizing expenditures from the TIF districts number 11 and 12 for utility improvements in the Housing and Development Authority in and for the city of Fridley, County Anoka, State of Minnesota, found on pages 26 through 35.
I'll second that.
We have a second, thank you. Any final discussion?
So, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Kozlucher, so the sidewalk's not gonna cause any issues, is putting in the sidewalk and doing the traffic light later, it doesn't really, one doesn't really have anything to do with the other, right? So it doesn't matter if it doesn't happen until 2020, we're not gonna tear up any sidewalk because we suddenly realized we needed to run something underneath something here.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Welcome, I will say that the plans will take into account that light insofar as possible. I won't say that a complicated light design or a change in the light design wouldn't impact the last few panels of walk, but that would be the majority of it. And we'll be, if that's the case, we'll be impacting curb and such on that side. So, it would be a minor change, if anything. We aren't, we wouldn't retrofit the entire walk or anything like that. It would be just right at the intersection.
Okay, just wanna make sure. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
We have a motion, we have a second. No other final discussion, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed, the motion carries. Which leads us under new business, item number 13, which is a resolution ordering for the final plans for the street rehabilitation project. Do we have any comments concerns, other than those that have already been expressed during the public hearing?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay,
Yeah, on page 123, second paragraph, again, I'm going to go back to this exit onto the service road. It says, "The city's capital investment plan includes rehabilitation of 69th Avenue from University Avenue East Service Road." And now you're saying that's not going to happen.
you in, paragraph 2?
Yep.
Okay.
It says,
This is capital.
69th Avenue to the East Service Road. Now, he said that's gonna be blocked off or not completed. So that maybe shouldn't be in there.
It looks like you're talking about the second sentence.
Well, it's still gonna be
The second paragraph, second
Yeah,
sentence,
so
right?
it's the city's capital investment plan,
Yep,
so
yep,
on.
second sentence.
Okay. 69th Avenue from University Avenue's East Service Road.
You have any response from Mr. Kozlucher? I mean,
Mr. Mayor,
it's just
Councilmember
talking about
Bar-
that whole street.
Yeah,
and
I'm
not
putting the
taking out
pressure on
that-
Kozlucher, I don't mean to do that, but
No, it's fine. Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Barnett, we can do amended motion with a measurement of feet,
Pardon?
where it'd be dead-ended if you'd like. We can amend the resolution, basically based on what the prior master plans and plans that have been shown to the council show. I think generally it's correct, but, if you want to be specific about it, we can be more specific if you'd like.
Well, this is in the presentation.
It's
Is there
in the
anything in the resolution that needs to
Yeah,
be
it
changed?
is
It's in the
on page
resolution as well.
126, it is.
And I think that's more,
Okay,
that has
it's
more
on-
bearing.
Okay, all right.
that's wrong. Oh, and it says right in here.
Mr. Kozlucher, are you proposing an amendment to the resolution, or?
Yeah, that's what he is.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Bolkum, I don't have standing to do that, but I would suggest that
I know,
if
but
somebody
what would you-
wants
what do you
to
think it
provide
should
an
say?
amendment that, gives a more specific location of the end of 69th, that's fine. I
Yeah,
think
but it
generally,
has-
like I said, generally it's correct. It's between East University Service Drive,
I think it's
so
fine.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's got to get eliminated.
I do believe we have an understanding here too, so.
So I guess,
I don't feel strongly that we need to change it, because I think we know what the project is, but
Your Honor, a question for the city engineer. Is it listed on that way because it needs to get eliminated?
Yeah, this is.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Weisselpel,
This is part of the project.
it does need to get eliminated, so it will be
So it's a
worked
part of the
on.
project.
Correct.
So eliminating it would mean that we wouldn't be taking that language out would mean that we're not including
right.
that segment for removal as part of the project.
does that consider rehabilitation of the street? I mean, just
Right.
a different rehabilitation. We're not removing and replacing asphalt. We're removing and putting sod in.
Well, plus there'll be plans, plus the whole idea behind this is we're moving a resolution for ordering final plans, so it will be in the plans, and that's what would be bid. So to me, leaving it there is not an issue, but. I mean, it's not any different than any other project we've done in the past where suddenly we're changing maybe a stub of a street or stopping a street or. We have a city.
Yes, we do.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Welcome, it is common practice to just name the street.
You're
But,
saying we should put
there's
that-
times when we've
No,
named
no,
distances
leave it
and
in
so
there
on
'cause
and so
it's
forth. If,
Just leave it alone.
I think the council should understand and feel comfortable that the street will be, the access to East University Service Drive of 69th during this project will be eliminated. And I don't think that that's a surprise to anybody on the council or anybody with staff.
And it was at the neighborhood meeting, so it's not only, it was there and there will be final plans.
Yeah, there's
directing
nothing
it to-
new in this.
Yeah, no.
Right. So We all understand what the scope of the project is, correct, Mr. Barnett?
We do, although I may not agree with it.
Yep.
Well, you can certainly vote against it, but I think that there's nothing new in here, and
I don't.
I think
Well-
what I'm hearing from this conversation, it's in the bidding process, all the details are in the bid. So they all know what they're gonna bid for, and that's gonna be removal of that segment of 69th Avenue.
Where does it say that?
Well, we don't have the bid package in front of us, but we all understand that project. This is nothing new. It was well talked about last year and then during the open house, so.
And Mr. Barnett, it's not any different than any other street project. We don't name exactly what goes down on every street. This is basically saying this is gonna be working from here to here, and then there's final plans. So I don't think that, this resolution's not any different than any other resolution that we do to go out for bids and specifications.
But I will tell you that it's duly noted and recorded that you're not in favor of that segment being removed.
Well, both the map and the notification here shows it being done.
No? I
I
think
tell you,
it's,
the map, as we explained to you, was really meant for the purposes of
I
showing
understand.
which
I
properties were being
understand.
assessed, either commercially or non,
And now here in the bidding, it says also that it's gonna connect to the
no,
service
it does
road.
not say that.
Yes, it does.
No, it does not.
What does it say? Did you read that? It
Yes, I
says,
did.
The city's capital investment plan includes rehab of 69th Avenue from University Avenue Service Road.
that's in the presentation, granted.
And you said that doesn't say that?
I'm saying that in the resolution, it says that we're doing the following project, including street utility improvements, including milling, asphalt overlay, pavement, reclamation, sidewalk construction, drainage, da-da-da-da. From this to this to this to this to this to this.
I would say it's sufficient that we have recorded this, it's
Okay.
in the minutes,
Okay.
and we understand clearly what the scope of the project is.
I got you.
Okay. Okay, if there's no other discussion, a motion would be in order.
Can I make the motion that we have a resolution ordering final plan specification and calling for bids, 2019 street rehabilitation project number 2019-01,
125 through 126.
125 and 126.
Second.
I'll-
Oh, what, sorry.
She beat you.
No,
Steve-
it was a
Steve's
draw.
got it.
I'll second that
Yeah, that's
motion.
fine.
Okay. We'll see how the recording secretary wants to do that. There's 2 seconds on it. Good for you.
Care one way or the other.
Okay, any final discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. And those opposed?
Aye.
So the motion carries on a 4-1.
Mayor Lund, if we could go back to item 12A.
Sure.
The city passed the HRA resolution, but they did not pass the joint powers agreement.
Let me get back here. Oh, this is the one that, 12A that Ann brought up?
Number 4?
Yes.
Item number 4 that we had discussion, didn't we vote on that?
Yes.
You voted on the HRA resolution.
I have Holcomb and Eggert.
Let me see.
the item that
Yeah,
we
she
removed
did.
From the
It was the
agenda.
HRA resolution. It wasn't with you.
Should be
What?
just 20.
Let me
thought
see
we
what
did
She
she
was
too.
reading from something else.
Yeah. I think we, I think the motion was for, on item number 4, which we got moved to 12A, was to approve the joint powers agreement.
What was said was it was approving the HRA resolution for the TIF districts and authorizing expenditures.
Is that in the?
That's what she said.
21, okay.
Okay.
So apparently that didn't suffice?
No.
You didn't like that?
Okay.
You gotta prove the joint powers written.
21, okay. All right.
Catch that.
Yeah, good. Hang on, let me just get to this thing.
Well, it kind of took us a while to take care of that, didn't we?
Well, for clarity, do you want to restate, a new motion?
Yes. Do you want me to, can I now do it, or do we need to go backwards and do something else?
Do you say we have to reopen that?
It wasn't,
A motion to reopen it?
It wasn't a public hearing.
Wasn't a public hearing.
No, it wasn't.
even though we made a motion, we don't have to go back and say we'd like to,
We can amend the motion.
okay. Mr. Mayor, if it's so in order, I move to approve the joint powers agreement for the East River Road Sidewalk Extension Project, ST 1921 between the city of Fridley and the Anoka County, Ward 3, and found on pages 21 through 35.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed, motion carries. Thank you for catching that. Which leads us to item number 14, informal status reports. Does the council or staff have anything to report to the viewing, listening audience?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, I want to thank all the people that attended the last corridor study. It was awesome. There was a lot of great discussion. We're looking forward to that final agreement or document, I should say. Everyone did a great job. It was long and tedious at times, I think, but it was a lot of great discussion, and I hope we can continue to harness that group. The annual 2019 block captain meeting is this coming Thursday, April 11th, from 6 to 7. And we were informed at our pre-meeting, our Director of Public Safety says, yes, we're supposed to get a lot of snow, but unless there's a blizzard or a snowstorm, because a lot of people are aware of this, that meeting will go on. And I guess if anything changes, it would probably, will be on our website. And then we have this Fridley Police Department as their accommodation and review board, and that will be on Thursday, April 18th, and it starts at 7. But if you're coming to the block captain, make sure that you, the sign-in starts at 5:30 because the meeting starts promptly at 6 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Comment, Mr. Hickok, not to put you on the spot, but do you have like a 30-second spiel? Sorry. About what's the next steps after the 4 quarter study workshops?
Sure, I just want to be clear, was that 30 minutes or 30 seconds?
30 seconds, I
Okay.
just spoke.
Yes, thank you very much. And you're right. 4 great meetings, lots of involvement. We want to keep now the action moving forward. We've got a very, very nice report, an 8-page report that was constructed by the group that was put together as a very thoughtful document to move forward and help support our discussions with MnDOT now as things will happen on Highway 65, things will happen on Highway 47 inevitably. They have their short-term, their mid-term, and their long-term, long-range type improvements that will be made. They now have a very nice document to refer to that is the voice of the citizens of Fridley that says, look, as we get to these points, here are our thoughts, whether it's relative to pedestrian crossings, whether it's aesthetics along the roadway, fencing, lighting, those types of things were part of the overall document. We are setting up a meeting with MnDOT now as a follow-up discussion to this to say, okay, you've got it, you're involved in the process, thanks for being there, where to now? And we're going to keep the public certainly involved with those discussions as those move forward also. We do think we have a very good relationship now, a very good partnership going with MnDOT. We had the regional engineer along. We had a number of people from MnDOT who attended, as well as the Metro Transit. So as we move forward, as they move forward, we're going to keep the public notified. This document is going to go on our website. People will be able to take a look at the document. If they weren't able to attend the meetings, they'll be able to read it. And also, as we advance with anything that happens along these corridors, we will keep the public notified of that as well. Mr. Mayor, is that what you're hoping for in a?
Yes, I do recall that. Was it Melissa that spoke at the
Melissa
end of
Barnes,
that we should notice some more minor things, but things that
Safety
they can do
improvements.
fairly quickly. That might
Absolutely.
even happen this summer.
That's
But
right.
certainly there's some midterm or longer range, and then ones that are even further out there. Those are the more expensive and more larger project aspects, but
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we don't want the audience to be surprised by it. You know, we had great participation, and we're going to try and keep that communication flowing so that they understand, as they see things happening out there, what is it and how did we get there? Thank you.
great, thank you, Mr. Hill.
And then last but not least, on April 27th, we have our town hall meeting. I know we'll announce it again, but it starts at 10 to noon, and great opportunity for a bunch of people to come, and if they haven't been to our new Civic campus, and it's always a very good discussion, so.
Great,
I have one more thing.
sure.
As you know, the council depends very much on the residents who participate on the various commissions that we have. And they work hard on those commissions. And we'll be getting together with all the commissioners next Monday night for dinner to appreciate their efforts.
Great, and we do appreciate them.
Yes.
And with that, we have a couple of openings on our appeals commission that only meets probably, what, once a year?
Once a
It
year.
seems like nowadays?
Yes, you know, depending on the requests that come in, but once a year probably is what the history has been in the last couple of years.
Yeah. But nonetheless, it's important, just they don't meet very often, but certainly if people have an interest, we'd ask them to make comment that they have an interest and fill a couple of vacancies on the appeals commission, so. Great.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Kozlucher, could you update us on the Craigbrook, Stony Brook project, where we're at and?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Volcom, so the contractor reached substantial completion last week. Curb was poured and basically all the preliminary grading work's done. We did have some interference with the river, obviously rising. Good news is it's coming down. And so there may be some reinspection at that time, and maybe some lighter equipment is brought down to kind of do the finishing work as needed. So we did have we had a meeting a couple weeks ago with property owner on the north side, who were, who had some concerns, and so we want to follow up on those things, minor, but important things. So, in addition, he was interested in opportunities to potentially armor some of his shoreline on the Mississippi side.
Great. Okay, if there's no other comments,
If nothing further, I would move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? The motion carries. Thank you for attending or watching your city council. Good evening.